She was declared dead 8 years ago during a classified operation. Her family buried an empty coffin at a military cemetery. Her fighter call sign was sealed forever. Then, a passenger plane faced disaster over the Atlantic. Two F-22 pilots froze hearing something impossible on their radios. A ghost was flying again. Before you watch, full story comment below, from which country are you watching? Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. It was November 15th, 2025. Exactly 8 years since Captain Sarah Martinez vanished during Operation Darkwing, a mission so secret that even her family never learned what she was doing when she died. At Langley Air Force Base in Virginia, her squadron gathered like they did every year. 20 pilots stood in dress blues, saluting an empty chair draped with the American flag. On the wall hung a brass plaque, Captain Sarah Falcon Martinez, 1990 to 2017, the ultimate sacrifice. Her father, retired Colonel Carlos Martinez, kept her flight helmet in a glass case. Her younger brother Miguel joined the Air Force because of her. Her mother Rosa still set a place for her at dinner on holidays. Sarah Martinez was a legend, top of her class at the Air Force Academy. F-22 Raptor pilot with over 1,000 flight hours. She spoke 3 languages. She was the best of the best. And then she was gone. 8 years ago, Sarah was chosen for Operation Darkwing, an impossible mission to fly deep into Syria, photograph chemical weapons facilities, and return undetected. Everything went wrong. Her F-22's stealth systems failed over the target. Enemy radar locked onto her. Missiles launched. Sarah had 3 choices: eject and face torture, escape and risk war, or find another way. She chose the impossible option. Sarah crash-landed her F-22 in remote mountains. But instead of waiting for rescue, she made a decision that changed everything. She took classified equipment, deleted all data, set the F-22 to explode like an accident, and disappeared into the mountains. For 8 years, Sarah Martinez lived as a ghost. She moved through Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, and Iran. She gathered intelligence that stopped terrorist attacks. She prevented weapons shipments. She saved lives that would never know they were in danger. The woman who emerged was harder, sharper, more dangerous, but also lonelier than anyone could imagine. On November 15th, 2025, Sarah sat in seat 32B on Delta Airlines Flight 847, traveling from Istanbul to New York. She wore jeans, a black jacket, and a baseball cap. To the other 287 passengers, she looked like any tired traveler. Nobody knew the woman in the window seat had skills that would soon save all their lives. In the cockpit, Captain James Cooper and First Officer Rachel Kim were flying the Boeing 7007 over the Atlantic Ocean. Captain Cooper had 20,000 flight hours and had flown this route hundreds of times. Then, at 2:47 p.m., everything went wrong. Warning lights filled the cockpit. The autopilot disconnected with loud beeping. Captain Cooper's hands moved fast across the controls. "Rachel, we're losing hydraulic pressure," he said. "Multiple system failures," Rachel replied. "Something is affecting the entire aircraft." Captain Cooper grabbed the radio. "Gander Center, Delta 847, declaring emergency. Multiple system failures. Requesting immediate assistance. Delta 847. Copied. Your position is 850 miles from the nearest airport. Can you maintain altitude?" Before he could answer, crushing pain exploded in Captain Cooper's chest. His vision tunneled. "Rachel, you have the aircraft." Rachel watched in horror as her captain slumped forward. "Mayday, Mayday, Mayday," she shouted. "Delta 847, captain is down. Possible heart attack. Multiple aircraft failures." I'm alone in the cockpit. In the passenger cabin, 287 people continued their activities, unaware their plane was dying at 35,000 feet above the freezing Atlantic Ocean. Sarah had been dozing when the aircraft's movement changed. To ordinary passengers, the shift was barely noticeable, a slight change in engine pitch, a subtle variation in the steady hum they'd grown accustomed to during the transatlantic flight. But Sarah's 8 years of survival in hostile territories had sharpened her senses to levels that seemed almost supernatural. She had learned to detect danger in the smallest details, because missing those details could mean death. She opened her eyes and listened carefully. The engines sounded wrong, not catastrophically wrong, but wrong enough that someone with her experience would notice. The plane's movement felt unstable, lacking the smooth confidence of a properly functioning aircraft. Through the window, she saw nothing but endless gray Atlantic Ocean stretching to every horizon. Then the announcement came over the speakers. Sarah heard something that other passengers missed, the fear that First Officer Kim was desperately trying to hide beneath a professional veneer. Ladies and gentlemen, this is First Officer Kim. We are experiencing some technical difficulties. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. We will provide updates as the situation develops. Professional words, calm delivery. But Sarah heard the slight tremor, the careful choice of vague terminology, the absence of any mention of Captain Cooper. Sarah unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up, moving with the quiet confidence of someone who had made countless life-or-death decisions. A flight attendant immediately rushed over, concern written across her face. "Ma'am, please return to your seat immediately," the attendant said, trying to maintain her professional composure while clearly worried about the larger situation developing in the cockpit. "I need to speak with your cockpit crew right now," Sarah said, with quiet but unmistakable authority that made the attendant pause mid-sentence. "I'm a pilot, military trained with extensive experience in emergency situations. I can help save this aircraft and everyone on it." The flight attendant hesitated, professional protocols warring with desperate reality. Standard airline procedures were clear about cockpit access. But these weren't standard circumstances. "Ma'am, I can't let passengers into the cockpit under normal circumstances. You understand the security concerns. Your first officer is alone in that cockpit with a dying aircraft and probably a dying captain," Sarah interrupted, keeping her voice low so nearby passengers wouldn't panic, but infusing it with urgent intensity. "I'm qualified to help in ways you can't imagine. We're over the Atlantic Ocean with no land in sight for hundreds of miles. How long do you realistically think she can handle the situation alone before something catastrophic happens?" The flight attendant looked directly into Sarah's eyes and saw something there. A depth of experience. A calm certainty in the face of crisis. A competence that couldn't be faked, that made her decide to trust this stranger. "Follow me quickly," she said. They moved quickly. The attendant used the intercom. "Rachel, I have a passenger who says she's a military pilot." Long pause. In the cockpit, Rachel fought to control the aircraft. Captain Cooper was unconscious. She was alone, exhausted, terrified. Pride meant nothing if everyone died. "Send her in." Sarah stepped into controlled chaos. Captain Cooper slumped in his seat, breathing shallow. Rachel gripped the controls, sweat running down her face. Warning lights flashed everywhere. "Who are you?" Rachel asked without looking away. "Sarah Martinez, military pilot, qualified on heavy jets. What's your situation?" The calm authority in Sarah's voice made Rachel glance back. This wasn't an amateur. Captain had a heart attack 5 minutes ago. Same time we got cascading system failures, hydraulics failing, electrical cutting in and out, autopilot offline. "I can barely maintain altitude. We're 850 miles from Newfoundland, losing altitude at 300 feet per minute." 8 years of impossible decisions had trained her brain to work faster. She saw patterns in the instruments, not random failures. Coordinated system problems. "First Officer Kim, I'm Sarah. I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Rachel saw experience in Sarah's eyes. "Yes." "Good. First, we stabilize the captain." Sarah checked his pulse. "He's alive, but critical. We need a doctor." She keyed the announcement. "If there is a doctor on board, please identify yourself immediately." A cardiologist, Dr. Michael Chen, came forward and began emergency treatment. Sarah focused on the aircraft systems. "Rachel, these failures aren't random. Catastrophic electrical fault. We need to land within 30 minutes. There's nowhere to land. We're over ocean. Then we make them closer. Do you have fuel? Control is the problem." Sarah's mind flashed to Afghanistan, landing a damaged helicopter with no hydraulics in a sandstorm. "May I?" She gestured to the captain's seat. Rachel nodded. Sarah's hands touched the controls and something relaxed. This was what she was built for. "Gander Center, Delta 847, Sarah said calmly. "We have a new pilot assisting. Military qualified. What are my landing options?" "Delta 847. Nearest airport is Gander, but you're 850 miles away. You won't make it at current descent." "What about military bases?" "Canadian Forces Base Goose Bay is 720 miles away. Adequate runway but challenging approach. Goose Bay acceptable. Please notify them. We need full emergency response. Coordinating now. Also, scrambling military assistance. What assistance? F-22 Raptors to provide escort. They'll reach you in 12 minutes. Sarah's hands tightened. F-22 Raptors. Her aircraft. You okay? Rachel asked. Fine. Let's keep this bird flying. For the next 10 minutes, Sarah and Rachel worked together. Sarah flew the crippled Boeing with delicate touch. Rachel handled emergency procedures. Dr. Chen stabilized the captain. Massive heart attack. Needs surgery. If we land in 30 minutes, he'll survive. Working on it, Sarah replied. The radio crackled. Delta 847, this is Raptor Flight, 2 F-22s approaching. We're here to escort you. Sarah recognized the format instantly. Raptor Flight, this is Delta 847. Good to have you. Multiple system failures, one critically injured pilot. Attempting Goose Bay. Major David Havoc Williams led Raptor Flight. At 36, he was one of the most experienced F-22 pilots. He'd punched through the sound barrier to intercept. Approaching the Boeing, he saw erratic movements indicating serious problems. Delta 847, Raptor Flight has you visual. Who am I speaking with? For 8 years, she'd used false names. But now, with 287 lives depending on her, she was tired of hiding. Raptor Flight, this is Captain Sarah Martinez. Long silence. In his cockpit, Havoc's hands froze. The name echoed like a ghost. Say again. Did you say Sarah Martinez? Affirmative. Captain Sarah Martinez assisting flight operations. In the second F-22, Captain Lisa Rodriguez keyed her intercom. Havoc, did she say Sarah Martinez? Like Falcon? Captain Sarah Falcon Martinez died 8 years ago. Havoc had attended her memorial, saluted her empty coffin. Delta 847, requesting confirmation. State your military background. Raptor Flight, former Air Force pilot, 1st Fighter Wing, qualified on F-22 Raptors with 1,000 hours. Last active duty 8 years ago. Another silence. Delta 847, what was your call sign? Sarah took a deep breath. This would end everything. The ghost would become real. Raptor Flight. My call sign was Falcon. In his cockpit, Major Williams felt his world tilt. His hands shook. On his display, his wingman had stopped transmitting. Havoc, this is impossible, Viper's voice came through. Falcon died 8 years ago. We were at the memorial. I know. I was her wingman. He keyed his radio. Delta 847, Raptor Flight acknowledges. Falcon, that call sign was retired 8 years ago following Captain Martinez's death during Operation Darkwing. I'm aware of my official status, Sarah replied calmly. It's complicated. Right now, I have 287 people who need to land safely. I could use assistance rather than debate about whether I'm dead or alive. Havoc made a decision. Whatever impossibility he faced could wait. Right now, there was an airliner in trouble. Copy that, Falcon. Raptor Flight here to assist. What do you need? The use of her old call sign hit Sarah hard. 8 years of different names, but never herself. Hearing Falcon felt like coming home. Coordinate with Goose Bay for emergency landing. This aircraft is barely controllable. We need longest runway, maximum crash rescue, medical standing by. Already coordinating, Falcon. Goose Bay rolling full emergency response. 11,000 foot runway. Foam coverage, every emergency vehicle. Distance 680 miles, approximately 41 minutes. Can you hold together? Sarah glanced at instruments. Hydraulic pressure dropping, electrical flickering. She was flying through pure skill. We'll make it. We don't have a choice. For 40 minutes, Sarah flew the crippled airliner toward Canada with 2 F-22s flanking her. Havoc and Viper coordinated communications and provided reassuring presence. But on their frequency, they had an intense conversation. We need to report this, Viper said. If that's really Falcon, I know, Havoc replied, transmitting encrypted reports. But whoever that woman is, she's flying that 777 like a professional. She's the only reason those people are alive. You think it's really her? Havoc watched the Boeing ahead, the subtle control inputs. He'd flown hundreds of missions with Sarah Martinez. He knew her style. Yeah, I think it's really her. Aboard Delta 847, Rachel watched Sarah push herself to absolute limits. I've been flying 11 years. I've never seen anyone fly like this. Where did you learn this? Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, Iran, places where aircraft are already broken. Rachel stared. What were you doing there? Staying alive. Falcon, 60 miles from Goose Bay. Weather clear. They're ready. Copy beginning descent. The descent was most dangerous. With limited controls and failing hydraulics, Sarah had to balance descent rate perfectly. Too fast, they'd break apart. Too slow, they'd stall and fall. She began with delicacy that made Rachel hold her breath. Every input precise, calculated, constantly adjusted. Delta 847, Goose Bay Tower. Cleared to land any runway. All traffic cleared. Good luck. Copy Goose Bay. We're committed. Sarah could see the airport, concrete strip in Labrador wilderness. The two F-22s positioned close enough she could see Havoc's helmet. You've got this, Falcon, Havoc transmitted. Bring them home. The landing was a masterpiece. Sarah aligned the Boeing while managing descent, airspeed, and roll tendency. She called for flaps and gear. Watched the runway rise. One attempt. No second chance. Main wheels touched with barely a shudder. Sarah deployed thrust reversers and brakes, but with failed hydraulics, brakes were weak. Brakes weak. Rachel, emergency brakes. They activated every system. Slowly, the Boeing decelerated. They used 9,200 of 11,000 feet before stopping. Emergency vehicles surrounded them, fire trucks spraying foam, ambulances rushing, rescue personnel ready. Sarah sat back, allowing one moment of relief. They'd made it. All 287 passengers safe, Delta 847 on the ground. All souls safe. Copy that, Falcon, Havoc's voice came back. Damn good flying. Welcome home. The two F-22s made one final pass, a salute, then accelerated away, leaving contrails across the sky. Captain Cooper was rushed to hospital. Passengers were evacuated. Rachel gave reports. We'd all be dead if not for the passenger who helped. But that passenger had disappeared. By the time investigators reached the aircraft, Sarah Martinez was gone. She'd slipped away during evacuation, moving with practiced invisibility, except she'd left proof. The cockpit voice recorder captured everything. Flight data showed her control inputs. Two F-22 pilots had heard her use a retired call sign. Within hours, military intelligence reviewed the communications. Within a day, voice analysis confirmed match with Captain Sarah Martinez. Within 2 days, they pulled her classified file. Operation Darkwing hadn't ended with Sarah's death. It had continued for 8 years as one of the most successful deep cover operations in history. Sarah hadn't died in Syria. She'd disappeared into Syria, gathering intelligence, stopping threats, saving lives. Her death had been perfect cover for an agent who needed to vanish. But now she'd exposed herself to save civilians, and the intelligence community faced a question. What do you do with a ghost who's proven she's alive? 3 days after the landing at Goose Bay, Sarah appeared at her parents' home in San Antonio, Texas. She stood on the front porch for a long moment before knocking, her hand trembling slightly as it reached for the doorbell. 8 years. 8 years of pretending to be dead. 8 years of wanting nothing more than to call home, to hear her mother's voice, to tell her father she was alive. But the mission had required complete silence. Her father, retired Colonel Carlos Martinez, opened the door. He was 68 now, his once dark hair completely gray, his broad shoulders slightly stooped from age, and the weight of grief he'd carried for 8 years. He looked at his daughter, his dead daughter, who was somehow standing on his doorstep, for a long, frozen moment. His face showed no expression at first, as if his mind couldn't process what his eyes were seeing. Then, tears began streaming down his weathered face, cutting tracks through skin tanned by decades of military service outdoors. "Hello, Dad," Sarah said quietly, her own voice breaking on the simple words she'd dreamed of saying for so many years. He pulled her into his arms with a strength that belied his age, holding her as if he could keep her from disappearing again through sheer will and love. His entire body shook with silent sobs. "We thought you were dead. 8 years. I'm sorry. I wanted to tell you. I couldn't. The mission—" "I know about the mission," her father interrupted. "I figured it out 3 years ago. I knew you were alive, but couldn't prove it without risking your cover." They stood reunited. Then her mother appeared, and her brother, and there were tears, embraces, words that couldn't express 8 years of grief transformed into joy. That evening, military officials arrived, polite, respectful, insistent. "Captain Martinez," General Patricia Hawkins said, "you've been operating without support for 8 years. Time to come in from the cold. We need debriefing." "What about them? They just got me back." "You won't disappear again. Those days are over. But there are procedures and questions." The debriefing took 4 weeks at a secure Virginia facility. Sarah sat across from analysts and strategists, telling them about 8 years that officially never happened. Infiltrating weapons networks, gathering intelligence on terrorist cells, photographing nuclear facilities, moving through hostile territories with only her skills keeping her alive. The intelligence was staggering. First-hand knowledge of weapons systems, photographs satellites couldn't capture, personal relationships with underground networks. Most importantly, she'd stopped 4 major terrorist attacks that would have killed thousands, operations she disrupted without anyone knowing. "What you've accomplished is extraordinary," Colonel Foster said. "But we need to understand the psychological toll. 8 years alone, maintaining false identities, unable to contact family. How did you survive?" Sarah thought carefully. "I survived because I had to. Because people depended on intelligence I could gather. Because every day alive was another day I might prevent an attack. And because I promised myself I'd come home." The decision to expose yourself, you knew that would end your operations. I knew. But there were 287 people who needed help. Some things are more important than cover. I became a pilot to serve others, not hide in shadows forever. While Sarah underwent debriefing, the story spread through aviation circles and mainstream media. Journalists discovered the mysterious passenger matched a military pilot who died 8 years earlier. They found connections to classified operations. The story exploded internationally. Dead pilot returns to save airliner. Ghost pilot's 8-year secret mission. The 287 passengers were interviewed. They described the calm, confident woman who appeared during their darkest moment. "I knew we were in serious trouble," said passenger Michael Harrison, but then this voice came over the speakers, calm, authoritative. "She told us what was happening, and somehow I believed her. When we landed and realized we'd survived, I wanted to thank her, but she was gone." First Officer Rachel Kim gave interviews. "Captain Martinez saved everyone aboard. Our captain was dying. Our aircraft was falling apart. I was alone and terrified. Then she appeared. She flew that 777 like she'd been born in a cockpit." Major Williams was interviewed about hearing the supposedly dead pilot's call sign. "When I heard Falcon over the radio, I literally froze," Havoc told CNN. "That call sign belonged to someone who died 8 years ago, someone I flew with. Hearing it again was like hearing a ghost. But I recognized her skills. Nobody flies like Falcon." 2 months after the landing, Sarah was summoned to the Pentagon. Her family was there, along with senior officials, Congress members, and media. General Hawkins presented her with the Intelligence Star for voluntary risk-gathering intelligence. She also received the Distinguished Flying Cross for heroism during flight, but the moment that meant most came after. Her old squadron from 1st Fighter Wing had traveled from Langley. Major Havoc Williams approached, followed by a dozen F-22 pilots. "Falcon," Havoc said, then hugged her. "Welcome home." Suddenly, Sarah was among her people, aviators who understood flight, who recognized sacrifice. "Your memorial plaque is still in the ready room," one young pilot said. "Should we take it down?" Sarah smiled genuinely. "Keep it up. It's a reminder of what was sacrificed. Besides, part of me did die 8 years ago." "Different how?" Captain Lisa Rodriguez asked. "Harder, sharper, more aware, but also more grateful for small things, a good meal, a safe place, people who care." "Your flying didn't change," Havoc said. "You got better. You learn things when failure means death. I've flown damaged helicopters through sandstorms, landed aircraft with no hydraulics in hostile territory. 8 years of survival makes you adapt. Are you coming back, flying F-22s again?" Sarah looked at the pilots, felt the pull. "I don't know. Part of me wants nothing more. But I'm not the same person. I've seen things that changed me. I'm not sure I fit anymore. 4 months later, Sarah made her decision. She would return to aviation, but not as a traditional pilot. She would create a new program combining intelligence, experience, with aviation expertise, training pilots who might operate in hostile territories. The program was based at Nellis Air Force Base, drawing students from multiple branches and allied nations. Sarah taught them everything she'd learned: how to fly damaged aircraft, survive in hostile territory, make impossible decisions. But she also taught something else: knowing when to break cover. I spent 8 years hiding because the mission required it. But when 287 people needed a pilot, I didn't hesitate. Some things are more important than missions or survival. Never forget, you're human first. 1 year after the emergency landing, American Airlines held a ceremony at JFK honoring everyone who saved Flight 847. Captain Cooper, fully recovered, stood beside Captain Rachel Kim, who'd been promoted. Dr. Chen was there. Passengers wanting to thank their rescuers attended. And Sarah, uncomfortable with attention, but willing to honor the request. "A year ago, I collapsed," Captain Cooper said. "I woke up alive because of extraordinary people. First Officer Kim, who kept flying, Dr. Chen, who kept my heart beating, and Captain Martinez, who appeared like a guardian angel." He turned to Sarah. "You gave up 8 years serving your country in ways most will never know. Then you gave up the anonymity keeping you safe to save strangers. That's heroism beyond comprehension." Captain Kim spoke last. "Before Flight 847, I thought I knew what being a pilot meant. Captain Martinez taught me different. Being a pilot isn't just about flying, it's about serving others, making impossible decisions, being ready to act when people need you." But the most meaningful moment came after. F-22 pilots from 1st Fighter Wing presented Sarah with a flight helmet painted in raptor gray and blue. On both sides, FALCAN, "We've been holding this for you," Havoc said. "Your old helmet was destroyed. This is your new one. The call sign Falcon was retired when we thought you were dead. We're reinstating it. You're the only person who will ever use it. Whenever you're ready to fly, your place is waiting." Sarah took the helmet with trembling hands. She thought she'd never fly an F-22 again. "Thank you, and yes, I'm ready to fly again." 2 weeks later, Sarah climbed into an F-22 cockpit for the first time in 8 years. The aircraft smelled the same: hydraulic fluid, electronics, that indefinable military jet scent. Pre-flight checks came naturally, muscle memory despite years away. Major Havoc Williams was in the second F-22, her wingman again. "Falcon, you ready? Born ready, Havoc." She was home. The two F-22s taxied, received clearance, launched into Virginia sky. Sarah pushed throttles forward. The Raptor's engines roared, pressing her back. The aircraft lifted and climbed with acceleration that made her smile. For 8 years, she'd been grounded, hiding, surviving. Now she was flying again, free where she belonged. The F-22 responded like an extension of her will, turning, climbing, accelerating through maneuvers, pushing physics boundaries. "Falcon, you still got it," Havoc transmitted. 8 years didn't slow you down." "Just getting warmed up," Sarah replied, rolling inverted and pulling through a maneuver, leaving contrails spiraling behind. They flew for an hour, running combat maneuvers, simply enjoying pure flight. When they landed, Sarah stood looking at the F-22 that carried her safely. She'd survived 8 years in hostile territory. She'd saved 287 lives by exposing her identity. She'd returned to family and military community, and now she was flying again, doing what she was born to do. 2 years have passed since Delta Airlines Flight 847 made its emergency landing. Captain Sarah Falcon Martinez now leads one of the most elite aviation training programs in the world, teaching pilots to operate in challenging environments. She flies regularly with her squadron, maintaining F-22 proficiency while instructing the next generation. Her family has healed from 8 years of grief. Her father treasures every letter. Her mother calls daily. Her brother followed her into military service. The 287 passengers formed Falcon's flight, meeting annually to celebrate survival and honor the woman who saved them. Captain Cooper flies again. Captain Kim has become one of America's most respected pilots. The F-22 pilots who escorted Delta 847 became legends, the aviators who witnessed the Ghost's return. Lieutenant Colonel Williams commands the squadron where Sarah once flew. He stops at her memorial plaque daily, though now it carries an additional inscription: declared dead 2017, returned 2025, welcome home. Falcon, the story of Flight 847, has entered aviation legend, taught as an example of skill, courage, and readiness to act. But for Sarah, the most important outcome isn't recognition or awards, it's that she's home. She flies with her squadron. She teaches students, she has dinner with family every Sunday. She still wakes sometimes reaching for weapons that aren't there. She still positions herself near exits. The 8 years left marks that won't fade, but she also laughs with friends, enjoys flying without hiding who she is, and has learned healing is possible even after trauma. She's not the same person who disappeared. She's stronger, harder, more capable, but also more grateful, more aware of what matters, more committed to using her gifts to serve. On November 15th, 2027, the 10th anniversary of her official death, Sarah stands with her squadron at Langley's Memorial Wall. The brass plaque reflects her return, but the core message remains: sacrifice, service, the price of freedom. Young pilots, listen as she talks about that day 8 years ago when her F-22 went down and she made the decision defining her life. I didn't choose to disappear. The mission required it. For 8 years, I lived as someone else, gathering intelligence that saved lives. It was the hardest thing I've done. But when Delta 847 encountered emergency, I didn't hesitate because some things are more important than missions. She pauses, looking at young faces. You're training to be elite aviators. You're learning to fly the most advanced aircraft. But never forget, being a pilot isn't about the aircraft. It's about service, being ready to act when others need you, making impossible decisions, and living with consequences. 8 years ago, I was declared dead. 2 years ago, I returned to save 287 lives. Since then, I've taught hundreds and flown countless missions. But the lesson is this: you are never truly lost as long as you remember why you serve. The mission will end, the aircraft will change, but your commitment to protecting others, that defines you as an aviator. The ceremony concludes with the missing man formation. 4 F-22 Raptors flying overhead, one pulling up to symbolize fallen comrades. But this year, the formation is complete. All 4 aircraft fly together because the pilot they'd mourned is standing below, watching them fly. As the jets fade, Sarah feels a hand on her shoulder. Havoc, her eternal wingman. You came home, Falcon. I never really left. I was always here in my heart, just taking the long way back. And in the sky above, 4 F-22 Raptors turn and bank, their gray forms cutting through clouds. They're not ghosts, they're real, solid, present, just like Sarah Martinez, who died 8 years ago but never stopped living, who disappeared but never stopped serving, who proved that sometimes the dead don't stay dead when people need heroes. The call sign Falcon flies again, and everyone who hears it knows they're hearing a legend, not because of the pilot who used it, but because of the person who proved that service, sacrifice, and courage can overcome even death itself. Captain Sarah Falcon Martinez stands surrounded by family, friends, and fellow aviators, no longer a ghost, but a living reminder that heroes emerge when they're needed most. She flew into darkness 8 years ago. She returned to light when 287 people needed her, and she continues to serve, to teach, and to inspire everyone who hears her story. The dead don't fly planes, but sometimes, when the need is great enough, they come back to life to remind us what it means to serve something larger than ourselves.